Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with Rausan Pereira. Former Mumbai Police Commissioner Param Singh filed a PIL in the Bombay High Court seeking a CBI probe against the Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh, who he claimed asked police officer Sachin Vaze to collect 100 crore rupees from bars and restaurants. The PIL also raised the issue of alleged corruption in police transfers and postings in the state. The IPS officer had earlier approached the Supreme Court, which termed the matter as quite serious, but asked him to approach the High Court. The criminal public interest litigation reiterated the allegations Singh had made earlier and sought an immediate, unbiased, impartial probe by the Central Bureau of Investigation against Deshmukh, an NCP leader. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the Maharashtra Police Saga. Joining me on the program today are Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Government of Maharashtra and Government of India, Dr. Vikram Singh, former DGP, Uttar Pradesh, and Kapil Sankla, Advocate of the Supreme Court. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Dr. Vikram Singh, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze, the gravity of the situation really as far as whatever we've seen in Maharashtra over the last couple of weeks is concerned. How bad is the situation? How would you read everything that has happened there? And what are your first thoughts?
Frank, I thought I would not live long enough to see this nightmare. But now that the nightmare has overtaken us, let us face the ground reality, howsoever terrible it may be. There are no bad soldiers, there are only bad generals. I would not like to apportion the blame on anyone except the top police leadership. We blame the politicians, we berate our so-called corrupt junior colleagues. The fact of the matter is, as Mrs. Roosevelt had said, nobody can humiliate you without your active cooperation. The police commissioner should have just walked out of the defense of the Home Minister's office the moment he was told that there has to be a collective corruption and the monthly payoff will have to be something to the tune of 100 crores. I, in my 36 years of career, have seen very, very dishonorable and honorable politicians, but nobody ever had the audacity to tell me to do anything that was illegal or immoral. And the moment they started hinting at it, I used to tell them it was my painful duty to tell them, thus far and no further, sir. Aapka rasta alag hai, mera rasta alag hai. What you want me to do, I can go on leave, I can fall sick, and I can tender conditional resignation also. You tell me what to do. But there is no way that I can subscribe to your illegal demands. And I will see to it that you are not able to push me across and ask your illegal orders to be carried out below my hierarchy also. But the fact of the matter is that unless I'm going to play ball with the political bosses, it does not happen. And Rome was not built in a day. This edifice of shame and corruption was built over decades. You may recall that there was a call for opening of bars, night places, and the malls 24/7. What was the logic? This was the logic, to have a higher turnover and higher loot. And like it is not a rot, it is cancer. Like cancer, there have to be multiple surgeries, and the multiple surgeries, you have to be cruel, to be kind, and ensure the cancerous parts are removed forthwith. Frank.
Very well said, Dr. Singh. Let me take the points that you made forward and take them up with Mr. Dua. Mr. Dua, what does this do really for the morale of the bureaucracy, for the morale of the police force, seeing something like this? What does it do to the people as well who need to go to the very same bureaucrats, the very same police, and they know all of this is happening?
Frank, pardon my just pointing out right in the beginning that those who called the show the saga of the Maharashtra police, we are probably concerned more today with the Mumbai police. And as the former DGP UP, Mr. Vikram Singh, just so eloquently put the issues, the Bombay police, other than the officer level, is actually separate from the Mumbai police. Mumbai police, up to SHO, etc., stay invariably within the city, metropolitan city. They are not assigned outside, though the SP level, DCP level people keep moving from one district to the other. Certainly. And second, I would want to just bring to your notice that the Mumbai Police has a separate act of its own under which it is governed, the Bombay Police Act. So it gives the Commissioner of Police magisterial powers of the district. Now several districts. He is the magistrate for all those districts falling in the metropolitan city of Mumbai. And so his role is somewhat different from what an ordinary Maharashtra police official posted. I wouldn't call Pune Mufassil or Nagpur Mufassil. They are also big towns, but it's a slightly different role. Having said that, just as a preface, I wanted to put that thing straight before we start the discussion that we are really today probably concerned more with the Mumbai police issues rather than the Maharashtra police per se. Having said that, let me say, and I'm sure my colleagues on the panel would have their own views, but probably along what I'm saying, that Mumbai police enjoyed a reputation for decades of being a well-run police force, a professionally run police force, whether it came because of the Police Act, whether the police or the DCP is exercising powers of SDMs and the CP exercising the powers of the DM, etc. They didn't have to depend too much upon outsiders, call it the IAS officers or others like me, for running the show. Third, I would say that the increased responsibility had also made the duties given to them in Maharashtra per se, because we went in for a decentralization of powers as soon as the state of Mumbai was created. That means way back in 1960. We said bureaucracy has to be reined in. Whether that was I wasn't in the service. I don't think many of my colleagues here were. But idea was empower the democratically elected people. So we had the Maharashtra Jila Parishad and what is called Jila Panchayats in Gujarat and elsewhere. First, probably state where formally the powers were taken away from district officials of development work and given to elected people. It may have taken decades for that to get fine-tuned, but it did let everybody know that, look, you are bureaucracy know, police know that you are not the absolute masters which you probably were during the colonial period. Right now, you got to work with the democratic structures, and we are starting off with rural areas, where in rural areas the district magistrate has limited roles. All development role is going to Jila Parishads and the three-tier Panchayati Raj. Having said that, I think we would probably, today's discussion, I would say that I agree with all the observations which have been made by Mr. Vikram Singh, and I'll be happy to chip in a bit later after our colleague Mr. Sankla has made his observations.
Let me bring in Mr. Sankla now. Then he's very patiently heard both other panelists out. So let's, since we are here, for the benefit of our viewers, let's also talk about the Mumbai Police Act and what special provisions that it provides really the Mumbai Police. That is one. And secondly, this matter has now gone to the courts. What do you see happening there? How do you see things panning out?
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Dr. Singh, and thank you. Thank you. It's a very sad day indeed as to what is happening in Mumbai. And, so policing is a state subject, and so it is state dependent. As per the constitution, there are special acts and special regulations made for the center, but they really do not have investigative powers, except, for example, CBI, which is itself under dispute in various states, especially Maharashtra, Assam, etc. And of course, organizations like NIA, etc., whose role prevails to specific activities like anti-terrorism activities, etc. So, policing being a state subject, every state police has certain rights and duties and certain powers. As far as the policing in Delhi is concerned or Mumbai is concerned, the powers are a little wider than other places. Vis-a-vis also, for example, Calcutta, in Kolkata, as far as the powers are concerned, there are special powers which are also magisterial powers. The powers, in fact, to actually see in cases of any public law and order situation, in property disputes to lock up premises, etc., etc. So quasi-magisterial powers, certain powers under the CRPC and powers are also there. That is one part of it. But the other part of it is what is really happening in Mumbai, and that is what the moot question here is. There is a gentleman called Mr. Vaze, who's a part of the Mumbai Police, one of their star players, who has 5 fancy, expensive, luxury SUVs parked in the police station in the crime branch, and nobody actually questions him. And that really shows what is happening in Mumbai. There is this old saying in Hindi, "Paap ka ghada jab bharta hai, tabhi jhalakta hai." You get to see the rot.
Absolutely.
And this is what it is actually. It is a long drawn rot. As a defense attorney for more than 20 years, we've seen the underbelly of corruption. It's a fact of life. This is what we do day in and day out. We are seeing criminals and we are finding ways how to get an acquittal in our favor, to get bails, etc. So we see every facet of life and every facet of democracy. But what's happening in Mumbai shocks even us. I mean, democracy has failed there. Gundagardi is what is happening there. And I've seen that in very close quarters very recently. So when we're talking about the Sushant Singh case and what really transpired and how Mumbai police reacted. And with Arnab Goswami, the way the reaction was, it was as if that they decided they are law unto themselves. They can mold, break, manipulate the law. And this is exactly what has happened in this Vaze matter also. Not only was this fellow being granted protection inside the police, by the police, by his officers, but very interestingly now the defense that has been brought out is that he is being a whistleblower, or the other gentleman who has now filed a case is a whistleblower, and that he's bringing in the facts of what ails the Mumbai police. That is not to be. The Whistleblower Act is very, very clear. It is not when your head is when you are in trouble that you can come out and talk about what is happening around you, and you cannot come up with something that exonerates you. It is only when you yourself come and confess to what you've done and you speak about others is when your confessional statement would be taken on record. Otherwise it becomes an exculpatory statement. It is only been created to safeguard you. So as far as what is happening in Mumbai is concerned, very rightly so, that the powers are being misused. It is shocking. And the rot is from the top. It does not start from the bottom. And the rot is so that the kind is protecting its own kind. The birds of the same feather are flocking together. They're still flocking together. And here is the time where the government there, the state government, has to answer. Because if it doesn't, it raises the moot question whether the state police, the way it is, answering to their political masters, should exist, or whether there should be a major change as far as the constitution is concerned, and this right of policing of the state is taken away by the center. Because at any instance, even the state governments, the high courts believe more in the powers of CBI, rightly or wrongly, but more in the investigative capabilities of the Central Bureau of Investigation or NIA or XYZ rather than the state police.
Sure.
Where your officer is putting a gelatin only to solve it at a later stage, or that is what is claimed. And the answer to that is that, there was no intention to go further with it. It's quite shocking when you think about it. So as I said, paap ka bhada bhar gaya hai, jhalak raha hai. We are seeing it, and it is time that we make changes. We take cognizance of it.
You know, Dr. Singh, the general public has the sense that, yes, of course, there are police men who are hand in glove with politicians, with the corrupt, and there's a general sense that corruption does prevail. But no one believed that it could go to this extent. Do you believe that irreparable damage has been done as far as the public is concerned with regards to faith in the police system?
It takes a lifetime to build credibility, and it takes just an incident like this to erode that total credibility built over 150 years. Mr. Kapil Sankla has lucidly explained and elaborated upon the various dimensions of what you mention as corruption. I say it is banditry. Corruption is merely hafta vasuli, planting gelatine sticks, extortion, organized and structures and institutionalized corruption. That is banditry. And when the then chief minister, when the chief minister compared, is he Osama bin Laden? I think Osama bin Laden was honest enough to be a proclaimed terrorist. Here there was a person, supposedly a police officer wearing a uniform, And I think it will be an insult to a terrorist to call him a terrorist, because he, on the guise of being a protector and a police officer, rakshak yaad mein bhakshak banna, which is immensely being more damaging and disastrous than being a terrorist. And then to have the temerity and the audacity to say that yes, he was at one time a Shiv Sainik, a spokesperson of the party, then got a wild card entry subsequently, and then given the most plum posting, all the sensitive assignments, then also be a part of the gang. I would say that he was somewhere 6 down or 7 down in the order of batting. What about the opening batsman? What about 1 down, 2 down, 3 down, 4 down, 5 down, 6 down? I think the more you go deep into it, the more bitter, unpalatable, and shocking truths you will be coming out and exposing. But let us see that the is a faithful and an investigation of integrity. But the credibility that is lost today, I don't see any reason. We don't have the likes of Julius Ribeiro. We don't have the likes of Inamdar, Ahmed Singh. It will be a Herculean task, but I do hope that we're able to salvage whatever vestiges of prestige that is left of policing in Mumbai.
And thank you for the cricket analogy in between the high octane cricket season that we are witnessing right now. Let me take the discussion forward, Mr. Dua. Do you believe what's the remedy now? Let's look at that aspect, because the damage has been done. Looking at the kind of political system that we have in Maharashtra right now, where each of the allies is pulling and pushing and trying to get score their own brownie points. What is the remedy really to this particular situation?
Frank, $1 million question. Though millions don't mean too much when this word was coined. Probably now we should be talking of $1 billion question. But let me start just by differing a little bit from Mr. Kapil Sankla, that CBI, NIA being entrusted with investigations work all over the country probably is not the way forward, if I might sum it, Mr. Sankla. Constitutionally, as was mentioned, policing with all its aspects, investigation, prosecution, the law and order maintenance, and all the duties which they do essentially are a state subject. CBI also, you know it far better than any one of us, that CBI is under the Delhi Police Establishment Act, and the state governments have their agreement has to be taken concurrence before a case can be investigated by the CBI in any state government. Having said that, I am one with what has been said, that we've been let down in the Mumbai Police Saga, if I might call it that, and confine it to Mumbai Police today, by both the police officers, probably the Home Department, which was governing them, consisting of civilians, as well as the politicians in the ruling party across the board, which irrespective of which political color they dot. We have seen all the parties there through their intimidation, through their interference, and now through their kind of subterfuge which is being created so that the truth is not reached, is something which cannot be at all justified. I know I have served that state for 37, 38 years, who I am talking about, etc. The fact of the matter is we've been let down by across the state, the politicians, in matters relating to police matters. But having said that, I don't think the police officers in particular have distinguished themselves well in any kind of a laudable manner, be it the police commissioner or be it the ASI or even the constables whose names are coming out in the drowning of the poor. I shouldn't call it poor, I don't know whether he was involved, or the person in whose name the SUV was in which the gelatine was found. Having said that, going forward, what's the way out? Number one, it has to be people's power. People have to now absolutely let it be known to their system, whether it is the media taking up their causes or others, saying status quo cannot be allowed to continue. We've seen enough of it. We cannot be taken for a ride any longer. Particularly, the disappointment, I would say, is larger because Mumbai Police at one point of time was considered, as I said earlier, a professionally run force. Whether now this subject, whether the parliament has to make the change or the legislature is the issue. State level politicians who have to kind of, in a way, bare their soul, see what's gone wrong, whether a thing like this might give them short-term gains, but are they eroding the standing of the state which has attracted billions of dollars of foreign money investment from other states and has been the leading financial or the industrial state, that with things like this, how much of damage is being caused into the state is something which their electorate, the media, as well as others, I would say every possible stakeholder has to be, including the businessmen, telling the masters that this is not on. You can't try and put gelatine across or near a businessman's house, all in the hope that you will be scoring points on one another and probably making, threatening or facilitating extortion if there are targets to be fixed. Somebody thought that the easiest way to recover money is go to the richest man in the country, threaten him, you'll probably get in one shot all the money which is being asked for, rather than going and collecting from hundreds of people smaller amounts. So that's the way forward I look at, but I'm sorry, to right now be able to point out what exactly needs to be done.
Okay, let's see if we can get a legal solution to this. Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead. I'm just coming to you. Go ahead.
Quickly respond to Mr. Dua. I am not promoting CBI in any manner. In fact, the number of cases that I have done against CBI actually show the shoddy kind of investigation that they do. Where I was coming from is this, that I was one of the first, or probably the first lawyer in India to do the love jihad matter, wherein when I was getting the bail for this gentleman, I was actually told that he actually had patronage of certain officers, police officers also, who actually thought that it's kind of all right to get a person from another community converted, and there was some monetary benefit. I also am doing a case where a police officer has been murdered by somebody, where the investigating officer was justifying it as honor killing because she was in love with someone out of her caste. I have also done this matter called the Northeast Uprising, where I was representing the government of India in Northeast, where the local police refused to protect and do their duty because they realized that their own brothers and sisters were a part of the uprising. So what I've realized over the years is that state police has its own compulsion. And those may be state-centric, but those are very dangerous. Those are dangerous because their families are living there. There could be political masters that could probably control their life, liberty, and future. And so therefore, there has to be some way where police and policing is protected. And it can only be protected if somebody from Gujarat, for example, can come and investigate in Delhi, and somebody in Delhi can go and investigate down south, etc., etc. So if you probably have an investigative unit that also has state units, but has a pan-India presence. So what would you have is also exchange. Somebody in Delhi might probably be more tech savvy than somebody probably in Northeast. And somebody in Northeast probably could have a better communal system, a community system to get information. Somebody down south could have his own system in place. And when you have an exchange of ideas, you have better policing. So I, as I said, am not adverting that we have CBI manning policing, because then you would have a question. But what I'm saying is probably it is a time that we recheck. We have Indian administrative services where an IAS officer goes all across India, taking his experience from one state to another and bettering the system where he goes. Probably it is also time that we also have an IAS system, IPS system like that, where it is not state dependent, but a nation dependent policing. That is what I was saying. And that probably is a way.
Shankla, just to point out, IPS is also an all India service where people go from state to state. Exactly, it's drawn on the parallels of IAS. The experience, all those restrictions or constraints apply on the IPS officers also that not more than 50% of them can be from inside the state. That's the maximum limit. Other 50% or more have to be from outside. The same as IAS. So between the IAS and IPS at the officer level, I don't think there is any distinction. They are the ones.
The difference here is, Mr. Dua, is that when you're talking about policing and not just the police system, policing is going to the very grassroots and getting information, investigation, inquiry. So when you're talking about a mid-level or a lower level person not being bound by his political master or compulsion, which basically comes from the system that we have in place right now, you have a better policing system. So we're not just talking about an IPS system on the top, we're talking about a policing system which could be pan-India, and importantly, the investigators that flow from one state to another, which is there in CBI, for example.
Gentlemen, Dr. Singh, you've been listening very patiently to both the gentlemen, and going back and forth really as far as this issue is concerned. Let's hear your thoughts as well and get closing comments from you with the best way forward.
Well, what Mr. Kapil Singh, there's a lot of merit in what Mr. Kapil ji had said. It already happens at a very, very informal and unstructured level that we borrow talent from states like Gujarat for the forensics and the prowess in ballistics. Also from the Punjab in respect of investigation and faithful investigation. But I will give you 3 quick points. Number one, we already have the police reforms case initiated by the Honorable Supreme Court. But there are 2 issues in which the whole nation, all political parties, irrespective of which, are absolutely unanimous in result. One, when it comes to their own perks, privileges, and emoluments. On one is the second is the police reforms. The entire political might stand resolutely together to ensure that it does not come through. I am privy to the fact and have spoken and have interacted with senior politicians in the country, and they have the opinion the day the police reforms come, Dr. Singh, we will have to choose another profession. We will not survive in politics. Our survival in politics is dependent upon a rotten and a corrupt, inefficient police system, and that is where our mana is. And if we destroy and remove our mana, where do we survive? You mean to say that this level of politics will survive with the efficient police? It will not survive. And the second is that improve and have a zero tolerance. Mr. Dua is a veteran, and he would know that when we joined service, the rate of dismissal in the services was 25%. An IPS officer was dismissed from service coming from Japan after a course and not declaring that he had imported a camera and did not pay duty on it. That was sufficient reason. Today, you have Mercedes cars and assuming things like that, people would have been sent to jail many times over. There are honorable IPS and IPS officers who do not know what a Mercedes looks like. We began with nanos and ended with Maruti 800s. Then living with honor was the key word, not to have Mercedes and not to have Prados and things like that. Where I'm sitting is my home in Lucknow, belonging to a Zamindar family and having all the top posts for 3 years. I'm living in an MIG house given by my father. I did not have the wherewithal to build or construct my own house. Frank.
We need more officers like you is the bottom line, and that's what we need. Right, Mr. Dua? Best way forward.
I think, as has been pointed out, let's start from what has been looked at in details. The issues which we are facing today, it might be coming to the forefront, maybe on a large scale in the case of Mumbai, but some of these cases, similar ones we have experienced elsewhere over the decades. I would say the expert committees like the Dharamvira committee, which looked at the police reforms and etc., the subject has been studied in depth over the years, short of saying that let's kind of take away policing and give it to the central government agencies, which is something politically which is not going to be acceptable. And probably when we set up a federal structure in the country, we did want to keep the states empowered also, and police maintenance of law and order and the other policing function was considered an important one to give them their whatever you call it, their independence. I would say let's look at all those recommendations. They've been sitting on the shelves. Investigations have been studied. Prosecution systems have been studied. NIA probably was not there at that point of time when the last set of recommendations came, but CBI was there. So it's by an extension only we are talking about CBI and NIA. those things to be put in under implementation at the earliest.
And Kapil Sankla, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
I have already said what I wanted to say. I will only say this, that India, unfortunately, is a very fragmented nation. I mean, there is a divide between North and South and Northeast, and also by caste and color and all of that. And I think we need to find ways to unite India. And we need to find ways that, the investigation, inquiry, and police are unhindered by the colors of caste, by divides of religion, etc., etc. Whichever way it is, and however strong a step we need to take, I think the time is now.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that what has happened in the Mumbai police is unthinkable and deplorable. Politicians are certainly to be blamed, but the police officers are equally, if not even more, to be blamed than the political class. There is a rot in the system that needs to be cleaned, and it has to be done at the earliest so that people don't lose complete faith in the system. We have to have zero tolerance policies, and police reforms are the need of the hour. Well, that's it from me. See you again next time. But before I leave, let me thank you once again for being here. Remember to like and subscribe to Bharata First on YouTube, and also follow our social media handles. I need your support more so now than ever. Please spread the word.